So just reflecting on two absolutely box office, quite literally guests in Stanley Tucci and Monique Eastwood. Stanley, so fascinating, talking about how you come back from a thing, how you come back better the second time round, effectively, after a treatment for a really worrying and traumatic experience, in his case, cancer. Really interesting hearing from Monique, from my side, how she was able to, she's not a patient person by her own admission, and yet in this instance she had to show extreme patience because she has to try and quietly, slowly and in the right way get him back to where he needs to be. And then he talks about the fact that actually he's back even better than he was before. He's really learnt the lessons of a previous exercise regime and has taken so much more forward with her help in terms of his strengthening and his core. I thought that was all really interesting, actually, because so many people out there will have gone through something terrible physically, mentally, and how do you how do you light that touch paper to get yourself back on track? And you have to know, right, that it's a drawn out process. It's not going to be an overnight success story. It's going to take time. And I think, that's very relatable, isn't it?
Yeah, like you say, that focus on the core was really interesting, wasn't it? With the recovery from such a severe illness, I that was a big takeaway for me. And then also the mental element of fitness, not just the physical element of going out and training, whether that be going for a jog or bike ride or in the gym, but what that does to you mentally. And I think we hear that from so many of our guests, the mental aspect of fitness, how that refreshes you mentally. That you can't reinforce that point enough, I don't think.
No, and you're really good at doing this, but always making sure, and I know you have to do it for work, but I think you'd do it anyway. There's always making fitness and exercise part of your daily routine. It does make such a massive difference. Stanley talks about the fact that if he doesn't have exercise in his life from one week to the next, he short circuits. And I think a lot of people understand. You don't necessarily know what it is that's causing the problem or the issue at the time, but actually you can say to yourself, if you do exercise at the beginning of the day, I think everything that happens as a result of that is better. Your decisions are better, your mind is clearer, your thought processes are stronger. Everything. I don't know whether it is the physical embodiment of doing exercise, and actually the physicality of that and what it does to your body and the endorphin release. But also, like you say, the mental clarity, just sort of parking things, putting things to one side in those moments where you're just able to concentrate on, doing a particular thing, and then you can spend the rest of the day on everything else. It does allow, doesn't it, for clarity of thought?
I think so. I think if you're used to training and you don't, you get seriously cranky. I mean, I know I do. You've experienced that from time to time. I apologise, but I think that's the thing. And it's hard to explain to people that maybe haven't been fortunate to get out and train that much. But it's an incredible release of energy, of course, but mental energy too, that can really set you up for the day and the weeks and months ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you know this with a sports team, but I mean, what do your training schedules look like over the course of a day as athletes? Because you have to train for the purposes of what you all do. But I mean, there's that other bit about needing it as well, mentally, as well as physically. I mean, what does your day look like? I don't think people aren't necessarily aware or familiar of that. What does your general training day look like?
Well, it's very sports specific, but in my particular role, it's about weight management, and also, as we talked about, I use it a lot for mental release. So I'd start 6:30 in the morning, and I run for between an hour to an hour and a half. Often not that fast, because that can be to do with weight management. But sometimes I push it a little bit harder, and I might even stretch myself and try and get a half marathon in or something like that. But that's what I do. And then I'm set up for the rest of the day out in the water or in the office or in the design office. It just depends. But some of the other players on our team, the cyclists, for example, they're out on the bike and they'll be doing 4 or 5 hours of training a day on the bike. It's insane, the amount of kilometers and calories that they burn. But that's just specific to the demands of their role on the boat and within the team. So each sport's different, each sport's person's role requires a different level of training and attention to detail.
Well, what do you think, though, exercise gives you personally? Forget the professional bit.
I guess personally, it freshens the mind. If I don't train, I just feel I get more tense, I get more cranky, I get frustrated. I don't feel, in some bizarre way, I don't feel like I've achieved anything with the day. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain mentally how that feels. But if you're used, like I say, if you're used to training and you don't, then it's frustrating. So when you get sick, you get ill, or your schedule's too cramped that you can't actually manage to fit in any kind of training, then you do get really frustrated, as you well know.
Yeah. Do you remember that time when you were coming back from that back surgery? When was it? 2013? No, 2012.
2012.
You're coming back from your back surgery. How tricky is it to get back into fitness? I mean, I know you've got a goal at the end of that year because you're middle of that year because it was the Olympics at the time. But how hard is it to get back into training when you're off the back of a surgery?
So I had back surgery. I had back surgery in February of 2012, and I had the Olympic Games in August of that year. So whilst that was a motivation, of course, to recover, it was also incredibly stressful because I had to try and gauge the balance between pushing to get back to fitness and competition versus not pushing too hard and having a setback with recovering from the injury and any operation. So that was a very tricky period. That was a very frustrating period, actually a little bit scary in terms of was I going to be able to make it in time. So yeah, I would, for my experiences, you absolutely can't rush it. If you try and rush coming back from injury and illness, you're gonna, at some point down the line, it will reverberate, and you'll pay some kind of a price for that. So you've got to try and pace yourself. That's the key.
Yeah. And the other great learner from speaking to Stanley and Monique, and also from what you've just said there, is you are going to have to be patient. You can't not be patient.
Don't we know it?